Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 423 of the Stacey West podcast. I'm your host tonight, Ben, and I'm joined by the prodigal son. He has returned. I'm joined by Mr. Charlie Beeson. How you doing, mate? Are you keeping well?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Ben. It was great to be back at Bank yesterday. My first game of the season, actually. First of many now, as you've very much mentioned there. And it was really good to see everyone again. And still, hopefully, we'll bump into many more that didn't get a chance to catch up with yesterday. But we enjoyed it, didn't we, Ben? We went out for a nice drink afterwards. You stayed out. How's the head feeling today?
Not too bad. I was not. I didn't go too heavy last night. I kind of balanced it out a little bit. And Gaz, Chris, and I, and a few others went to see Ferocious Dog at the Drill Hall, or the Drill as it's just known now. Stu came along as well. Really, really good gig. They just get better every time we see them, and they are. They're calling it a day in 2026, so they're going to have 2 tours next year apparently, which will be very good. But of course, you are now back in the UK full time. It's been a bit of an excursion for you, and a bit of good old life experience. At such a tender young age, Charlie. But how are you finding things being back home? I know you've not been back for too long, but.
Been back for 2 days. No, it's good. Obviously, loved my time out there, but it was always going to kind of be a temporary sort of arrangement. I was always going to look to come back, and it was now that kind of the time was right to do so. But yeah, it was so good to come back, especially being back at Bank yesterday. When I first went out there, people would say, "Oh, what's the biggest thing you'll miss? Is it your family?" Nah, don't tell them I said that, but nah, it's Bank. It's the football family, because that's exactly what you look forward to every Saturday afternoon. Granted, normally I was sat watching the games on my TV screen with the aircon on because I was too hot, and that was also a little bit of a shocker yesterday. I had about 5 layers on in the end, I think, but no, it was really, really good, and great win to kick it back off as well.
Absolutely. So look, we may as well jump straight in to the game. We've got a couple of other bits to talk about as well, but we'll come to those after we've gone over the game. But yeah, it's great to have you back, mate. It really is. And unfortunately, just the weather being as naff as it was, probably the best welcome back to Britain that you could hope for, I imagine.
It was pretty perfect that at half time I went down with my dad, stood and had a beer, and my hands were shaking. I was getting rain dropped into my pint of Stella. It was like as quintessentially English as you could probably get for a half-time break. So yeah, it was nothing like easing back in, that's for sure.
Nah, that's fair enough. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, let's get into the game then. The lineup came through, 8 changes from midweek. I think we all expected that. We weren't expecting the full lineup from the Barnsley game to stay. But James Collins starting, Frankie Okoronkwo starting, and I think the biggest surprise for me was probably Eric Ring not starting. I thought he'd done enough to sort of cement his claim for a league start again. And I was maybe a little bit disappointed, I think, to see Eric not starting. But that proved not to be too big an issue in the long run. But other than that, I mean, I think it felt quite strong going into the game. Nothing apart from Ring really gave me any warning signs, Charlie.
No, I very much agree with you in the Eric Ring case. I was with Chris when the team lineups came out, and it was the first thing that we both noticed because we'd already mentioned the fact that it would be really good to see Eric Ring start again in the league. And obviously, just as you said, it felt like he had kind of deserved it and kind of earned his way into a starting position. Now, Frank Okoronkwo came in, and it's no slight on Okoronkwo, by the way, when you see his name on the team sheet, because he's had some really good cameos so far this season as well. But obviously, it would have been nice here at Ring, especially when it's Stacey West patron-sponsored Eric Ring. But Michael Skubala did say in his post-match press conference that the reason for that was because from Doncaster's side, Luke Molyneux down their right-hand side was probably their strongest player. And to be fair, I think he showed it at certain points yesterday as well. And he just felt that with Adam Reach being the left back, it would have been slightly better to have Frankie Okoronkwo with a little bit more kind of defensive-minded in Skubala's mind anyway than what Eric Ring could have provided over there, and felt that link-up would have just been a little bit stronger to try to stop Luke Molyneux. And tactically, I think that worked at times as well. Reach and Okoronkwo had some really good link-up, and they seemed to kind of constantly know where each other were. I could quite often see it. Adam Reach is going forward, Okoronkwo isn't, and is kind of making sure just to kind of stay back. So, yeah, they kind of worked that well between the two of them. So there was method in the madness, even if, like I say, it would have been nice to see Eric Ring start.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, but getting into the game, I think, I think Doncaster clearly had the better of the early exchanges. I think it's fair to say. A couple of opportunities. I think it was Gibson tested. I say tested. He fired a shot at Wickens, but it basically was quite a tame shot. Went straight down Wickens' throat. Nothing too troubling. And then I think we started to get a little bit of joy out wide from primarily on the right from Tendai, and it was something that Grant McCann picked up on in his post match as well. Lots of balls going out to Tendai on the right hand side, linking up with Street. Sort of on the overlaps and getting Street into play as well, getting some crosses in the box. And then the first big talking point of the game fell, I think, just after we started to maybe get our sort of heads in the game a little bit. I think, we had that sort of rough-ish 15 minutes or so. And then you see Rob Street pop up with a header, and you think, okay, there we go. There's the goal we want. There's what we want. We want to get that nice early start. And then it gets called instantly for a foul. Now, I will give the referee credit in one thing, and that was he blew the whistle straight away. However, I don't think it's a foul. Like, I don't know how many times I can watch it back and just think, I don't think it's a foul. Like, he's not putting his hands up to push the lad. He's putting his hands up to steady himself. He's made contact, and the lad's gone down like a sack of tates. To me, that felt like a really, really harsh disallowed goal. But I think it showed maybe a little bit of the intent that we had, and that we would have hoped to see for the rest of the half. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I don't think it's a foul. He goes up with his hands out, not his elbows out or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's not trying to do a Ronaldo against Ireland and shove an elbow into somebody's back. He's going up. He's obviously trying to steady himself. The defender's quite frankly just been weak in that moment, not gone up with him, and gone down, and the referee's bought it. A lot of the times we have the conversation, if that was anywhere else on the pitch, would it have been given as a foul sort of thing to try and objectify the decision in itself. And realistically, I don't think it would be. Second of all, I don't think the opposing player goes down as easy as they did anywhere else on the pitch.
Well, you say that
because he realises he can't get the ball.
Yeah, I mean, there was one example of it that happened quite late on in the game that actually made me laugh out loud, where the exact thing happened. Like there was, I can't remember who it was for Doncaster, but he had his hands up. There wasn't an attempt at a push. He literally had his hands up. Conor McGrandles felt something in his back and proper Klinsmanned it, like absolute pratfall. And the ref bought it. So it's like, in that instance, there was a bit of consistency, and he did give it somewhere else on the pitch, but it was just annoying. I think had that gone in, I think heads would have gone up and everything else. But yeah, it would have been nice for Street to get his goal against Doncaster as well, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah, absolutely. From our point of view, and to be fair, Street deserves another goal. I think in the league he's only had one so far this season, and that was that goal against Stevenage, which was kind of a little bit of a melee, and a few different players could have been kind of lining up to try and get that goal. And he does deserve another opportunity to get a goal. He's been playing really, really well, and he's always a brilliant outlet. We spoke about it last night, and I don't have the stats, and I really want the stats. They'll be on Y-Scout somewhere. I don't have access to that. But what I'd love to know is the number of passes from George Wickens to Rob Street, because it seems whenever Wickens gets the ball and he's going long, it's going to Rob Street out on that right-hand side. And the thing is, it works. So keep on doing it. Because Street seems to be really good at challenging for that ball, bringing it down and then creating that something with it. Whether that is then moving between him and Derricka to try and create a little bit more space over on that right-hand side, or obviously trying to drive a little bit more centrally with the ball instead. Or obviously just trying to drive to the byline and get some form of a crossing as well at that point. So, yeah, Rob Street has been really, really solid for us in a number of games so far this season. So I would definitely love to see him get another goal, and he definitely deserved it yesterday if the referee didn't just want to blow for something silly. At the end of the day, the whistle, I believe, was blown before the ball had technically crossed the line anyway, as I was watching it. So even if he wanted to, let's say, regret his decision and change his mind, technically he couldn't at that point anyway.
Yeah, no, so yeah, frustrating one, but you kind of, we move on from that one a little bit. And then the next real moment came from Sonny Bradley. Now, Sonny Bradley's obviously been a bit of a revelatory signing for us. I think he's been excellent so far. He's been man of the match multiple times. One of the first names on the team sheet at this stage in the season. He's just been the perfect replacement for Paudie O'Connor. Hasn't made too many errors, but he definitely had one in him yesterday. Played a bit of a poor back pass to George Wickens. The ball ends up with Billy Sharp shortly afterwards. 9 times out of 10, you put your house on Billy Sharp scoring that goal. He managed to get in, but I will say it was an absolute howler from Bradley for him to be, to play it through. However, the recovery from George Wickens and Conor McGrandles in particular was superb. You watch that replay back, McGrandles is sprinting back to try and close that down. He closes Billy Sharp down. George Wickens has come outside the area to try and block off the pass to him, or block off the shot before the pass is played to him. Sorry. He then scrambles back, makes himself nice and big. Sharp then has to take a couple of touches, has a shot. You think, oh Christ, here we go. And then who pops up on the line to head it back? Sonny Bradley, who sprinted back on to make amends for his mistake. I think personally he's put himself in his fantasy EFL team, and that he's just trying to stat pad a little bit by getting a goal line clearance. I'm assuming that's possibly a metric in there. I'm not playing it this year, but yeah, he was superb in that recovery. And I don't think really he made much of a mistake after that. I think he was, that was his one moment, but he recovered very quickly and got himself in back in everybody's good books really swiftly, didn't he?
He did. Look, it's no excuse. It's not really even that much of an explanation either for the mistake, but in those kind of conditions, that can happen to anyone. As I think that the fact it happened to Sonny Bradley kind of proves. Obviously caught a little bit short. Doncaster were obviously quick to pick the ball up. Billy Sharp, I was talking to a Doncaster supporting friend of mine afterwards who was at the game, and he said, I just wish that Sharp hadn't taken quite so long with the ball and taken those few extra touches and had just shot earlier. yes, that is fair. He definitely did take a little bit longer, and maybe could have had a better opportunity if he'd have shot earlier. But a big part of that, exactly like you were saying, was because of the recovery from McGrandles, from George Wickens, from Sonny Bradley to be putting himself on the goal line to try and stop any kind of, just try and stop the goal itself. Realistically as well, if I was to ask any Lincoln player to be stood on the goal line to try and make a clearance like that, it's going to be Sonny Bradley sticking his head in the way. And that's exactly what happened. So, yeah, he made the mistake. He rectified the mistake, and the only person that I think could probably be annoyed is probably Conor McGrandles, because he had to use so much energy to absolutely sprint it back. And he must have been blowing after that one. I know I would have been.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was one of those moments you just think, we've gotten away with it there. And I think overall, we'll touch on it a little bit later on, but I think overall it was the first instance of maybe making our own luck and luck being on our side a little bit yesterday. We bemoaned it before and said, the fine margins, if things go one way or the other, when are we going to get the things starting to fall on our side a little bit? I think yesterday we probably used up a few of the 9 lives if we'd have had them. Next bit, really, it was the first. I'd watched the extended highlights back, and it's one of the first moments after the Bradley incident. There was a number of times when you're watching back the highlights yesterday of just how quickly we were able to recycle the ball. Yeah. Because you start watching the highlight and you get the previous passage of plays shot. So you see the final shot or the final moment of the previous passage of play, and then within 5 seconds, 10 seconds, the ball's gone out, it's come back in, it's been recycled, it's been played out wide. And that's exactly what happened here with Frankie Okoronkwo. So there was a bit of a defensive ricochet which found its way to Rob Street. He then played through James Collins. Collins was he was a little bit wide, but he was 6 yards out, and dare I say it, that's the kind of opportunity that I'd expect Collins to just put his laces through and bury, but he decided to square it. Unfortunately, didn't get to anybody. Draper then ran out to get the ball, recycled it back in pretty quickly, and Okoronkwo's header, it was inches wide, absolutely inches wide. And those of you that listen to the podcast on a regular basis will know that last week, or on Tuesday night, just before Frankie scored his goal against Barnsley, Emily had messaged the group chat saying, if Frankie puts the ball over the bar from close range one more time, ... So yesterday, after that header from Frankie that just went wide, I said to the group chat, if Frankie heads it inches wide just one more time, ... And it seems like we're pretty good at foreshadowing in that group chat, doesn't it?
It certainly does. That was quite a good moment, to be fair. Look, in terms of the recycling of possession, it was something we did so well yesterday. I was just trying to have a look to see if I could find the kind of possession heat map from yesterday's game. It doesn't give it directly on any of the sites that I've got, but what it felt like was that so much of our possession was just around the D, just outside of the penalty area, kind of into the final third, but not actually in the area, because it was constant. We weren't playing stupid passes. We weren't trying to force things through. We were being patient. We were finding the right opportunities. We were putting the ball into the area, and then if it didn't go to anyone or it came back out, well, we were doing the same thing again. And it worked for us on a number of occasions. We did create some decent chances that, Frankie Okoronkwo should have maybe put one or two more away, which I'm sure we'll talk about the bigger one a little bit later on. But he did put one of them away. He drifted in from the left-hand side, and it was an incredible header into the side of the net, basically, past the Doncaster goalkeeper, Timothy Lotutala, isn't it? Bit of a mouthful. But no, it was a really, really good header. And to be fair, he deserved it and he earned it from the opportunities that he'd had so far. And, probably kind of vindicated Skubala's decision to start him over Eric Ring because he was central to a lot of our opportunities yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. I think the highlights just do justice to how quick the move was as well. The ball gets played out to Dariqua pretty quickly. A couple of touches and it's crossed, into the box. And that is a superb header from Okoronkwo. Yes, he's found the space. He's basically unmarked in the box, and to get the cushioning just right, because when you're in that spot, you can either basically go for the bullet header and try and power it past the keeper, but the placement of that header was absolutely perfect. I don't think he could have got it more in the bottom corner if he'd have tried. To cushion it just as much as he needed to do, take it past the keeper. There was no way that the keeper was getting to that. Sent us into absolute raptures. And I think the group chat turned pretty quickly on that one after seeing, if he puts a header wide one more time, to all of a sudden he's just scored a header. I don't know if our group chat's cursed or whatever, but there was definitely something going on with Frankie and mine and Emily's, admittedly slightly tongue-in-cheek criticism yesterday. But I think that was it was just excellent all round for that goal. I think we looked good for it after, as I say, after that first 15 or 20 minutes. And then the rest of the half, there wasn't a huge amount to write home about after that. I'm just looking through the shot list here. Sonny Bradley, it says, had a shot on 37 minutes, but that was blocked, so I can't really remember that one. And then the next one for me, the last real moment of the half came from Sterry, who had an absolute rocket of a shot just before the halftime whistle went, and I thought that was, watching that, you just think, oh, if that was on target, that's an absolute belter. But we've talked about the stats before. We'll talk a little bit about the stats because, as people know, we're not the stats people as such. Chris isn't here, so we'll mention them a little bit. But yeah, on the whole, I think it was a decent second half of the first half. I think is probably the best way to say it. We once we'd got our eye and once we'd got our foot in the game a little bit, I think we started to come into it. And I think most people going in at half time maybe felt quite confident that we could go on and win by, one or two more.
Well, absolutely. I think going into the game itself, most fans were confident. Most fans that you spoke to in the fan zone, we were all pretty confident on our predictions. The patrons Discord were also quite confident in all of their predictions. And I think the only kind of thing that we saw being a major threat was like the weather conditions. That's kind of what we were going into the game thinking. Because, Doncaster's run before yesterday was really nothing great. I think it was 2 points in their last 8 matches.
They've not won a game since September in the league.
Yeah. Obviously, that's such a poor return coming to Central Bank. So we had the right to feel confident. And then, exactly like you said, we grow into the first half. We have some really good opportunities. Arguably could have been 2-0 up. But obviously, we were 1-0 up at the time. And it was kind of like, okay, now let's try and turn the second half into not one of these situations where we're now seeing out the game for 45 minutes. Let's turn this into a bit of a confidence booster. Let's try and get a second goal from some of these opportunities and kind of really build from there and not be sort of worrying as we kind of edge closer to 5 o'clock. Didn't necessarily go quite to plan.
No, definitely not. But I think overall, going in at half time, I didn't feel like we were going to come away with nothing from the game, and I thought really the only outcome that we could foresee was going to be 3 points. So let's just kind of touch on it because we've mentioned it already. We did say on on Wednesday's podcast for Tuesday's game that if you take the same view of the game that we did in terms of Rotherham, because I know Chris got a little bit of flack for saying that statistically we were better than Rotherham after a certain point in the game. And Tuesday night, Barnsley was statistically better than us in several areas. And yesterday, Doncaster were statistically better than us in nearly every single area. So again, it's another one where you're looking at the eye test. You're looking at the things that we're doing right, the things that we're doing that give us that edge, and of course, there's the luck element to it as well. The first half, you look at it, I think it was Doncaster 6 shots, 3 on target. We had 4 shots, 1 on target. That was the shot that went in. I know it's the number that nobody likes to talk about, but XG 0.93 for Doncaster, 0.31 for us. Passes, we were pretty consistent in the first half in terms of being on top in those numbers. And then defensively, we were pretty solid as well. Honours were pretty much even for a lot of the stats in terms of who had what. But in the first half, the biggest one, obviously went in 1-0 up, and we had 57% of the possession. And I think that was one of the first times when I've seen us have more of the possession and look like the better side for the majority of the half. It's a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. Doncaster were a really strong side yesterday throughout the whole 90 minutes. They just specifically showed that in the second half. And honestly, their form at the minute didn't reflect how they played, which was quite scary at certain times in yesterday's match. But that first half in particular, we were doing better with our opportunities. They had a lot of chances as well, but they weren't being clinical enough with theirs. They weren't even getting the shots on target that they need to, or at least challenging shots on targets. Like that first chance on kind of the 10-minute mark, that Gibson opportunity where they broke and kind of caught Deriqua kind of napping a little bit on our right defensive side, managed to get past him and then effectively pass the ball into the hands of George Wickens. Those were the sorts of opportunities that they were getting. Ours, even though we may have been missing some or getting some off target, they were really strong headers that would just go the wrong side of the post, or they were phantom goals from Rob Street. So, yeah, there was just a difference really in that kind of level of just purely being clinical in the final third that we had, especially in that first half yesterday, that they just didn't. And they were a little bit wasteful with the opportunities they were getting. However, obviously, coming out to the second half, you could really see that they were going to try and be working on that. And obviously, they had the first big chances to do that.
Yeah, definitely. It is something that we'll touch on. We will take a break shortly for an advert and to say hello to folks. But I listened to Grant McCann's post match as well, and he was quite honest. I think it was a fair enough response. I think it was just they had a bit of bad luck. They're not entirely sure how our second win ended, which we will talk about. But the one thing that he did say was they were trying to cut out those diagonal balls from out to the right hand side, out to Deriqua and out to Rob Street at half time. So that it was obviously something that was picked up on, and then it plays into a discussion that we're going to have as well, where that they'd obviously seen that was where some of our threats were coming from, and that was what they tried to do to resolve it. So. Look, it's a little bit earlier than we normally would do, but we are going to take a little bit of an ad break now so we can come back and talk about the second half cleanly, I guess. So, yeah, for those of you that are listening, go and get sold something. For those of you that are watching live, we will say hello to everybody in just a second. And, yeah. Cool.
Hello, everybody, right. In just a second.
Yeah.
Right. Can I just mention, by the way, me and Ben were sat in here having a chat at about 6:15. And there was plenty of you sat in the comment section having a conversation between yourselves, talking about the game yesterday. So, by the way, I absolutely love that. Like, what a community you guys are
100%.
making here.
100%. So Richard was in first, says, evening Ben and Charlie. Gosh, my first night, I must be desperate. Desperate or keen? I'm going to go with keen. Yeah, we'll go with keen on that one.
It's listening to us. I'm going to go with desperate.
Mr. Barton's in, Steve's in, says evening everybody up the Imps. Gerard's in, says evening all. Dom is in, evening all. Mick Kennedy is here, says I'm ready and waiting. It's Mick in the Philippines. Quite a good few fans out here. Permanently good evening. It's early morning here. Flossie is in. Good evening, you Imps. Devon Imp is in, says evening. John Bates is in, says evening. Who else have we got? I've seen loads of people in tonight. It's great. Kate's in, says evening all. We'll be listening while at the Nottingham Lions versus Blackburn Hawks game. I want to say ice hockey. Maybe ice hockey. I don't know. Carl Mercer's in, says good evening all. Excellent result yesterday. Doncaster didn't make it easy for us. Indeed, they did not. Dave Tuplin's in, says evening everybody. Matt Povey's in, says evening everybody. The wife is in, she says evening. I think she's probably upstairs doing some work and listening to me. Why she's doing that, I have no idea. Steve Jollins is in, says evening. Malcolm is in, says hi to all. Good old England won again. Dave also says welcome home, Charlie. So yeah, getting some good welcome backs. Leslie is in, evening all from podcast Mum and Dad. Good to see you. Emily is also in, says Halo from Stacey West's little sis.
We need that in pink fluffy writing with a matcha coffee, isn't it, for Halo?
For those of you that aren't aware, we will discuss that actually towards the end, because I'm genuinely quite amused that we've had some terrible features on the Stacey West that have lasted longer than something that Sky Sports have done. But there we go.
We've had some of Chris's predictions that have lasted longer than Sky Sports.
Oh, that's gold. I really hope Stu sees that and gets it clipped, because that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Keith says, evening, lads. We needed that win. I thought we were desperately in need of some width in the second half. I don't like the way we sit back on a 1-0 lead. If Donny had gotten something from the game, which I think they'd had deserved, that would have been down to Skubala's tactics. That's something that we're going to touch on in the second half of the show, Keith. So, yeah, it's a point that I understand, and I think there's discussion points either side of it. So yeah, we'll come on to that one. Walter's in, says evening, gents. Who else? I think Gaz Nicholson's in, says was pleased with our attacking play yesterday. Wickens could command his area a little bit more at times. And where are we? Steve Norton says, loving that the auto captions say Cincinnati Bank may be a sign of the future. That's a good one. David Larder's in. It says evening all. Stuart Marshall's in. Says evening gents. John Booth is in. Says evening all. And Sue is in. Says evening all. Do you think Justin's last couple of games have been affected by not getting chosen by his country? Interesting one, actually. Interesting one. That's a good one. And I think that might be everybody. I do apologise if I've missed anybody off the list, but it is so good to see everybody in. And like Charlie says, it is genuinely great that we've got a little bit of a community going on here around the Stacey West. So, right, we will come back in unless you have anything to add, Charlie.
No, let's go.
Beautiful. Right, we will come back in 3, 2, 1. There we go. We've got some adverts for you. We've had a good old little discussion with the people that are watching live. If you want to watch it live yourself, do get involved. It's every Wednesday, every Sunday, 7 o'clock on YouTube and Facebook. And I think we might also be looking at doing other platforms. I don't know. There's a new feature that we've got where we can do
technology. I don't understand it.
I know there's a new feature that we can, like the software that we use to stream the podcast. We can now do a vertical and a horizontal version of the podcast. So that might give you an idea of where we're potentially looking to go next with some stuff. So we'll see on that one, but it's all good. So yeah, coming back in for the second half, Charlie. where are we in my notes? I think the first real moment of note came from probably Doncaster's man of the match, Luke Molyneux. I thought he was really good, real danger all the way through the game yesterday. But he had an absolutely stinging drive, kept out excellently by George Wickens, like high up to his left, flew across the goal and kept that one out. That was absolutely top draw save from what was an absolute pile driver, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a really good shot. Even better save, clearly, from George Wickens. So yeah, was really pleased with him for that. Luke Molyneux, by the way, just want to touch on him. I agree. By the way, he had a really good game. I think he's a really strong player for this level, and he's a player that I certainly wouldn't mind us having. And yeah, I just thought that he was outstanding yesterday. So to be fair, praise where it's due to Doncaster. Obviously, we mentioned before the break that overall they were really strong yesterday in certain moments, and Luke Molyneux was very much at the centre of a lot of those opportunities, and he's clearly a lad with confidence in a team that maybe is lacking that confidence to be able to kind of have a drive like that, even if obviously it was saved.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So and then it kind of just seemed to ebb and flow again. I think, we were starting to maybe get on top a little bit. Definitely didn't have the sort of pace and the energy that I was, maybe hoping for coming out in that second half. But there was shortly afterwards, we've got a rule in the Stacey West group chat. We're not allowed to say he's got to score because it winds Gary up. However, there was a moment yesterday where we all basically went, I'm not going to say it, but. And that moment, Charlie, followed a little bit of a mad spell. It was a corner that we won through actually quite a clever little free kick routine. Bayliss playing it around, kind of around the corner to the street. Reminded me a little bit of the ones under Danny and Nicky, where we'd play it out wide and free somebody to get on the end of it. Corner comes in, gets cleared. It finds its way back to Deriqua, who plays it back to George Wickens. And again, it's about recycling the ball nice and quickly. Wickens punts it forward. Sonny Bradley gets on the end of it. He gets his foot on it, lays it off to Frankie Okoronkwo about 16 yards out. You'd put your house on him to score. He doesn't have a goalkeeper in front of him. He doesn't have anybody in front of him. It's him and the goal. And he hits a steward. Yeah.
It's bad. Do you know what? I'm thinking in the moment, sure, it's not actually that bad when you watch it back. Like maybe you can excuse the angle a little bit more. Maybe, actually the goalkeeper is still in the line of sight and it's still quite. I can't really excuse that one. I mean, the ball's coming across him with a bit of speed, but still, he should be putting that in the back of the net. But he doesn't. He does to tell him that. He'll be telling himself today when he's watching that back. And if that was the opportunity to go to look like we were talking about just before the halftime break, there, we wanted to turn that second half, turn the whole game into a little bit more of a route, a bit of a confidence booster, and a bit more of a comfortable afternoon. And that was the perfect opportunity to do so. And obviously it just didn't happen. By the way, the ball over the top to kind of break that Doncaster defensive line was outstanding. So to even be in that position, that's maybe part of it. Maybe he just wasn't expecting that to have happened. But obviously when the ball did come back across to him, he knows he should be putting the ball in the back of the net. He's dragged it ever so slightly wide when it is an open goal. Pretty inexcusable for a striker. And if he hadn't have already scored, maybe we're having a bit of a different conversation today about him wasting opportunities. But we're not, because he did get the first goal. He did have some great chances and was finding himself in the right positions, and some of his touches in the middle of the area and kind of little passages of play were also really strong, which is actually why I gave him man of the match yesterday as well. So yeah, it was man of the match with a slight asterisk of saying this would have been a much more comfortable man of the match. This would have been a much more comfortable match if we'd have just put that one in the back of there.
Yeah, look, it's we can sit here and we can say it because we know that we've got the win under our belts, and it maybe cost us a hair or two, and in some of our cases, Charlie, it may have cost us that in the moment, and obviously the slight panic that we found shortly afterwards, but yeah. Overall, it didn't have too much of an impact on the game. One thing that I think probably did have a little bit of an impact on the game, maybe not to the point where it could have been night and day. I mean, obviously he did disallow a goal, but I think we probably need to talk about the referee a little bit here for a couple of minutes, because obviously the goal, Rob Street's goal got chalked off for. It's a very, very soft incident. I don't think anybody that I've spoken to realistically thinks that he should have had that one chalked off. But there was quite a lot of moments yesterday where Freddie Draper is getting absolutely battered all across their back line. He's getting the ball, he's trying to win the ball, and there was a moment in particular where he got dragged back. He basically got, for those of you that are fans of or have seen any WWE, he basically got RKO'd, like going forward. The referee didn't give anything. Doncaster went forward, and then that was the passage of play where their lad went down with the head injury at the end of it. It was the same for James Collins. I think he had a couple of moments where he was, getting through and got pulled back. And then, Rob Street gets penalised for putting his hands up. I don't understand it. Like, I just, the standard of refereeing seems to be dipping more and more as the season goes on. Obviously, we've had, the incidents at Rotherham with the offside, with Abikwu being onside, with their goal being offside, and all sorts of stuff like that. And then with Derico getting sent off for talking back to the referee and saying, the following week, Doncaster, Rotherham, nobody, that offside wasn't given because nobody called for it. What do we do as fans and as players? Like, if somebody's getting literally pulled down and then they go on the attack, how are you meant to deal with that as a manager and a squad of players? It was just, some of the decisions yesterday were absolutely unbelievable.
My halftime notes consisted of just a nice single sentence of, has Freddie Draper been caught with the referee's misses? Because it just seemed so biased. And I will quite happily admit it if it's actually happening the other way around. We've got a squad full of tough players who are more than happy to go in with some robust challenges at times, and sometimes beat the opposition more physically. If Rob Street's ghost goal was actually a foul, and he definitely did clearly push him with force, fair enough. I'll say, yeah, no other problem. That's fair enough to be chalked off. But that's not what was happening. Like you say, there were some of the challenges that were going on Freddie and some of the others as well. Yeah, it's so frustrating when that happens and that isn't caught quickly and kind of nipped in the bud at the start of the game, because then the opposition know that they can get away with it, which they did repeatedly. And the referee was consistent in not giving those as fouls. And it turned into counter-attacks left, right and centre. And that shouldn't be happening. And it must be so frustrating for the players, exactly as you said there, when realistically they're on the receiving end of that. And that's what causes things like yellow card for dissent.
Yep.
Luckily, that didn't happen yesterday. Freddie Draper didn't go ahead and get himself booked for dissent. But I'll be honest, if I was him, I think I may have ended up saying a few choice words to the referee in the moment. Because, if you're constantly being bundled over like that with NFL-style challenges rather than football-style challenges, you must be, you would be getting really, really frustrated. It just didn't seem to stop. And to be fair, that happens a lot to Freddie. And it's something we kind of just mentioned off air actually before we started. Like, I think he's had a really good impact this season. He definitely needs to do a little bit more in front of goal. I think that's fair enough. But he really gets himself about, and he's a really good outlet for us consistently. But the problem is he's this big, tall striker. The minute he touches a defender, the referee gives it the other way. But yet, whenever he's being bundled over, I don't know if it's because of his kind of height and his kind of the physical side of his game, where it's like, well, if you're going down that easy, then you're just kind of looking for it. When half the time that isn't what it is. They are really strong, robust challenges. So I don't know how it changes, but to be fair, yesterday's referee wasn't the first one to act like that towards Freddie Draper, and I definitely don't think he'll be the last. It was the same for Joe McCarmel last season as well.
Yeah, no, same like that. I think I described it a little bit earlier on in the season as kind of a bit of Reedy syndrome. Like Reedy was, for all intents and purposes, a shithouse. Like we know that, but he would just have to breathe on a defender.
Yeah,
they would go down, and then they'd get the free kick. But they could climb out. They could use him like a climbing frame, and he'd never get anything. And the same thing's starting to happen for Freddie Draper, and it's really frustrating to watch, because I do appreciate it when a referee likes to let the game flow, likes to have a strong challenge goes in. He doesn't give the free kick for it. He's quite happy to let play go. But when there's a difference between a strong challenge where somebody wins the ball and somebody just getting absolutely hauled down while they're trying to, make their way through an attack that then, like you say, spawns a counter-attack on the other way. It's so painful to watch sometimes. But yeah, that's the referee talk out of the way. We'll get that out of the way now, because the next bit is it's a moment that at the time I thought, oh, hang on, have we just switched off there? Because I just couldn't see any urgency from us. And this is obviously Doncaster's goal. Couldn't see any urgency from us at all. The ball gets cleared out by Tom Hamer. It ends up on, at the feet of Luke Molyneux. House, I think, tries to close down Molyneux, but he is blocked off by the Doncaster's number 2. Freddie Draper's running back to try and get the challenge on Molyneux as well, but I think given what we've just spoken about, it was difficult to maybe, if you put a challenge in on him, we know what the referee is going to give, so he's reluctant to put that challenge in, because at that point it's not necessarily a dangerous area of the park. He doesn't put that challenge in. Molyneux skips past, plays a ball through to Hanlon, who turns and shoots. Now, the thing is, Hanlon is in more space than I think anybody in our back four would have appreciated. He stepped off. Well, Tom Hamer's actually a couple of paces in front of him, and either he stepped off Sonny Bradley, or Sonny Bradley's just stepped back from him. And there's nothing to take away from the finish, because from a Doncaster perspective, that's a really, really good move and a really good goal. Couple of touches, straight to Hanlon, bang, turn and bang, and that's it. It's a really, really well worked goal. It's just frustrating from our side, because it felt in the moment that we'd switched off, and looking back at it, I can't shake that from my head. No,
it was a difficult goal. And a frustrating goal to concede. I definitely agree with you on that. And they will be happy with it. They found the space, used the space. Hanlon had only been on the pitch a matter of minutes, quickly turned, and obviously got the ball in the back of the net, slotted it away nicely. So from a Doncaster point of view, they'll be happy with it. From our point of view, when I was kind of watching it back, it's the defensive line is just far too disjointed. Tom Hamer stepped up with his man to kind of stay close to his man. Sonny Bradley hasn't moved with him, which has then left the space open for Brandon Hanlon to to obviously kind of find that position and still be onside. And that's the big thing. If Sonny Bradley had stepped up as well, then, because it looks like it was only Sonny Bradley that was keeping him onside at the time. So if the whole defensive line had moved up, obviously they may not have had the goal, or it may have been chalked offside. I think what has happened is Tom Hamer's stepped up. Brandon Hanlon's probably sort of thought, oh, well, Sonny Bradley's kind of behind me. He's probably going to move up. I'm going to go a couple of steps forward. He's got a couple of steps forward. Sonny Bradley hasn't. And then exactly that, found that kind of half space in the middle, turned, shot. So, yeah, it was just far too disjointed from a defence that never really looks like that and very rarely gives that much space kind of on the edge of the edge of the area there. So, really disappointed to have conceded the goal in that manner and conceded the goal at that part of the game. There's a comment on the YouTube here just sort of saying that we got very leggy in that period, and I very much agree with that. It happens quite often, and the intensity that we try and start games with and kind of that physical presence that we're constantly trying to put in there, it's totally understandable that some of our players are kind of starting to feel like that by the 70th minute. I'm not going to say that the whole team kind of switched off and didn't really have the legs to try and defend that. I think they did. I think it was purely just one of those moments where
it's a lapse in concentration, isn't it?
Together, it absolutely was. It absolutely was. And yeah, we then needed to try and recover from that, because giving a goal away in the 70th minute when we've looked comfortable at parts of the game wasn't great. Even though Doncaster were very much coming back into it in the second half, we needed to try and stay on top.
Yeah, no, definitely so. Yeah, I think when that went in, there was probably an air of a little bit of concern. I know that there definitely was among our group chat, at least. I think that we love Stu. We love Stu on the podcast, but there was a very brief moment between Doncaster's goal going in and what happened next happening, which wasn't a lot of time at all. But Stu messaged and said, "This game's Doncaster's to lose now." We were like, "That's a good reaction there, Stu. Nice one, mate." But look, it was quite clear that they were coming back into it. So what happened next was pretty crucial. And we reacted in a positive way. I mean, Ben House was on the pitch at this point, and I think he immediately started showing what he's about. And I was just really happy to have him back on the field, to be honest. Very, very, very happy to see him back from his brief injury. But the ball comes in from Tom Hamer. It kind of finds its way to the feet of Ben House, who has a shot, bounces off the goalkeeper, and goes in off the feet of Robbie Gotts, who I think yesterday contributed more to Lincoln City than he did when he was at Lincoln City while in a Doncaster shirt. One of the most bizarre goals that I think I'm going to see this season. It was genuine luck, I think, that, Gotts just happened to be there, and it just happened to come off the goalkeeper and ping back and end up in the back of the net. Just a bizarre moment. And it took me a second to realise that it had gone in. I was like, well, what the bloody hell happened there? But you don't complain when you get that look, do you, Charlie?
No, look, the long throw that we deploy through Tom Hamer is never going to create nice goals to watch.
Nope.
But it's a goal. It's for Lincoln City, so I'll enjoy watching it time and time again. And that's exactly what it is. It's about the old school style, get the ball in the mixer and hope that it drops your way, whether that means dropping to the feet of an attacker who's got then an open goal in front of him or whatever that, or dropping to the feet of a defender who is willing to put it into the back of their own net. That's what you want from those long throws, and that's exactly what we got yesterday. And it was very lucky. It was a minute after they had equalised. It must have given Doncaster fans one of the biggest sinking feelings they could have had. But quite frankly, I did not care yesterday because, although all of the stats, all of the metrics show that Doncaster were good value for at least a draw, if not beating us yesterday, I still felt that we were the ones that were the good value for coming away with the victory, based off the eye test, based off that feeling at Sincil Bank yesterday. So, yeah, we got lucky with it. It wasn't a pretty goal. I don't care. There's also a comment here on the YouTube again saying that Tom Hamer did steal quite a few yards yesterday when he was trying to take that throw in. He absolutely did. He'll do that every time. We love him for it. Every other fan hates it. And quite frankly, we will hate it when it's done against us. But that's the way football is, isn't it? And that's the way EFL football is when you've got kind of a specialist player for those situations like we have in Hamer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they were stealing yards all day as well. I think there was one that went out by the dugout, and they ended up taking it from the halfway line, I think, at one point, which was, But let's talk about it then, because after the goal, Doncaster really came back into it, and I think it made for quite a nervy last 25 minutes or so. When you take on board the additional time. Just looking through the substitutions here. So Riley Towler came on for Freddie Draper literally a couple of minutes after we'd scored our second goal. And this is one I think that's maybe got on a little bit of flack. And I'm just going to pull the comment back up. And I'm sorry to call you out on this one, but the comment was from Keith. He says, I thought we were desperately in need of some width in the second half. I don't like the way we sit back on a lead. If Donny had gotten something from the game, which I think they deserved, that would have been down to the tactics. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about this, and I've seen this kind of all over the place. So we'll talk about it a little bit here. But the thing that I keep coming back to on this, sport is one of the only jobs that you can have where somebody is actively trying to do the same thing you are with the absolute opposite intention. And that doesn't, obviously we know sport's not a normal job.
In fairness, by the way, I think some of my colleagues may fall into that category. Or former colleagues now.
I work in IT. That is a feeling that is, the feeling is there, but it's not true. Yeah. But you if you're a footballer, you have 11 men trying to do the exact same thing as you are, but from their perspective. So you've got 11 people trying to stop you from doing it. Now, Grant McCann has said that at halftime, he noticed that we were trying to put diagonal balls over to the right-hand side, and that was something that they wanted to try and stop. That's a shift in Doncaster's mentality. That's a shift in the way that they're playing. If we're 1-0 up, if we're 2-1 up, I don't necessarily think that I don't necessarily think there's a message from Michael Skubala to everybody on the pitch to say, right, we've gone 1-0 up. Let's just sit on that. Let's not try anymore. But you've got 11 men against you that are trying to they're trying to get back into the game. And I know that's obviously, we talk about game state, we talk about all that sort of stuff. But the mentality of the opposition plays into it a hell of a lot. It's not in a bubble. Our 11 are not in that bubble. They are actively trying to be better than the other 11 that are on the pitch. So while I can see, so I've just seen Carl's comment. He says, John Schofield explains this brilliantly. A council worker digging a hole doesn't have someone trying to fill it in at the same time. Absolutely. I can see why it looks like Riley Towler coming on for Freddie Draper in that 75th minute looks like a very negative change. I thought it was initially. I was like, why is he doing that? We need to try and maybe keep the game going. The difference here is Adam Reach can move up to midfield. Adam Reach can play on that left-hand side further up the pitch. Riley Towler can fill in at left back. Riley Towler can play left back. So was that the intention for Riley Towler to come on, play left back, push Adam Reach up a little bit, move Frankie into the middle in that 10? I don't know. But it's very easy to sort of just go, it's negative. We're sitting back. You've got to also take into account the opposition want to get a goal back. They will probably be going hell for leather. Doncaster are on a really, really poor run, like we say. They're desperate to get results. They were throwing everything at it. And I think if we'd not made those changes, if you try and bring a defensive-minded player on, you've got a better chance of stopping them from going and getting something from the game. It was Doncaster that forced us into making that change, I think.
Yeah, look, the note on kind of going more defensive. In the game yesterday, it's kind of a little bit difficult to say exactly what shape Skubala wanted for the last kind of 15, 20 minutes. The first half in particular, and especially the first 60 minutes, we were playing very much 4-4-2 out of possession. It was really structured. Everybody knew their role, and that's great. When you're going the last 15, 20 minutes of the match, when you are only one goal up, you don't normally have what I would kind of call neutral possession. So possession kind of where you're passing it around your defensive third, trying to move the ball forwards kind of slowly. So because you don't really get that, it's a lot harder to kind of see the out of possession shape that is intended, because sometimes it's a little bit more of a scramble. It's a little bit more fluid because they're constantly attacking, and that's what we sort of found yesterday. Is it negative to bring on a defender for an attacker? Well, it depends on what your perception of the negativity is. Because if we've won the game 2-1, it's a positive change in the fact that it clearly worked. We need a little bit more defensive stability to finish out the game. We've spoken about lapses in concentration from our defenders yesterday. Sonny Bradley, for example, being one of those that's been spoken about in that. And I don't necessarily think he had the greatest of games yesterday, although it certainly wasn't poor. But his standards are so high that if he's not on a 9 out of 10, then it's worse than what he's normally doing. So bringing on another left-footed centre-half is a good option. And you're not going to take off Sonny Bradley to bring on Riley Towler. I also don't think you're going to bring off Adam Reach to bring on Riley Towler, because Adam Reach gives us something for the last kind of 20 minutes of the game. The same as Tom Hamer. I wouldn't want to see him kind of coming off at that point, because, again, definitely would have liked to have seen another opportunity from a long throw-in. So going to, let's say, a 5-back and playing a little bit more defensive in that, I don't think it's that much of a problem. I think it helps us and probably has won us more points than it's lost us this season. But you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If we don't make those substitutions, or maybe we make substitutions on the 85th minute, the conversation is then, actually, was it too little too late? So I don't think there is this perfect solution. I don't mind us going a little bit more defensive to see out games. I think the best Lincoln City is when our backs are against the wall. We've seen so many times how our defence will stand up and be counted whenever they need to be in those situations. And obviously, you can't hold out for a full 90 minutes. Bolton away was kind of the perfect example of that. We scored with 19 seconds on the clock. Obviously, the first half, we were the better side, but then the second half, they came out. We needed to effectively defend for a full 45 or 52 minutes it ended up being. And in the 52nd minute of the second half, that was then when Bolton got their goal. So you can't do it for a full game, but doing it for the last 15, 20 minutes, every single side does it. And, unless you're Man City playing at home against Burton and thinking that you're going to be comfortable at 2-1 with 20 minutes to go, I think it's still a good thing to be doing it, just to try and see the game out. And like I said, I think that's when we see the best of our defenders.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think it doesn't make it an easy watch. I will say that. It felt like yesterday could have been more comfortable. I would have
be Lincoln
liked
City if it was an easy watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have liked yesterday to have felt more comfortable. And I it's not me saying, "Oh, everything's fine." It's not me saying that at all. Didn't necessarily enjoy the the feeling of that last 10 minutes or so when it's like, come on, we've got to see this out. Why, don't get me wrong, I'd love to go throw another striker on and go and get another goal, but the game is not in our control at that point. So yeah, it's just a bit of context, maybe. I do feel that way sometimes. Why are we going negative in inverted commas? It's like it's a question that I don't think has an easy answer, because there's so much that goes into the question. So yeah, but look, we did see the game out. We did have one slight nervy moment at the very end with Bailey. I think came close to equalising, just putting it past the post. But managed to see it out. And I think yesterday was a good example of a League One match. I thought it was a really good game of football. Two teams that were wanted to fight for something. Obviously, Doncaster wanted to fight to get their run out of the way. And I think we're obviously fighting. Well, if we'd have scored again yesterday, we would have gone top. We're now second in the table, or joint top, if you wish to put it that way. I think on paper, and again, the vast majority of people not going to care that we weren't brilliant yesterday. They're going to look at 2-1 and go, "Oh, Lincoln won again," or Lincoln have won. They're second in the league. That's as people keep saying to us, that's the stat that matters. So yeah,
it is, and it's nice to be on the other side of one of these, because it feels like we've not had too many like this season. Where, do you know what? Maybe we didn't deserve it. On the stats, we certainly didn't deserve to win the game by 2-1, and yet we did. And walking away from the game, I didn't feel like it was some smash and grab result. I felt like we were good value for the result, albeit Doncaster were also a really strong side and very much proved that countless times yesterday. Potentially a little bit of a turning point result where we've shown that we can win the games when we're not necessarily the better side. And can we kind of translate that, go away to Wickham and hopefully get a good result next Saturday? Because obviously they're a strong side, and they're going to be a real big challenge for us. So yeah, I think
putting a bit of run of form together as well at the minute.
They certainly are, yeah. So it's another game where we may not have sort of the share of the stats being on our side, and can we kind of get another result just like what we did yesterday? That's what we're going to be hoping for. And then it's also going to be about hoping that we're going to have games like we did against Exeter, where we were clearly the better side, but this time coming away with the victory. Because at the end of the season, exactly like you said, it's the points that count. And we've had such a mix of games in terms of those underlying metrics. So it's kind of really hard at this point to kind of pin down where actually are we in this league table. Are we what maybe yesterday showed us, we're actually around Doncaster, and that's maybe where we should end up towards the end of the season? Or is it actually, no, we're better than Stevenage when we beat them, or we're one of the best attacking outlets in the league, like we showed against the likes of Luton or even Exeter, where we were okay, we didn't score, but all of the underlying metrics were that we were so strong going forward. It's really difficult to kind of pinpoint where we are at the minute. But if we can get the results in both of those games, the games where we are the better side and the games where we've maybe struggled, as the stats suggest, then we're going to come away at the end of the season being very, very happy with where we are in the league table.
Well, where we are at the moment is second in the league table, and it is a delight to be there. Right, last couple of bits before we leave you all with your Sunday evenings. We've drawn Huddersfield in the next round of the trophy. Yay.
Not great, is it?
No, painful, that one.
It'll be a good Tuesday night down the bank.
Will it?
At least it's at home.
But we knew it was going to be at home.
Yeah, I know.
To be honest, I'd have much sooner faced Chesterfield, because I'd just probably come in and shake their hands for giving Grimsby a bit of a crap day yesterday. Huddersfield is in the next round of the trophy. The next bit of news kind of put it was maybe not as much of a surprise after something that was said by Michael earlier in the week, but Ocean Gallagher, after really impressing in the trophy on Tuesday night, has gone out to Boston on loan again until January. I think he probably might feel he's got some unfinished business there, given how his season was unfairly cut short last time out. So, yeah, all the best to Ocean. I think he's had a really crap time of it recently, and to come back, play a full 94s, and then just be, get a chance to go out and get some more football at Boston should be a good move for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Good move for him. Good move for us. Good move for Boston. It's going to be a big season for Ocean Gallagher. I kind of said last season when it was our live show, actually back in April, I made a point of saying I think this year could be one of those sort of sink or swim sorts of years for Ocean. It feels like, anyway, he's been around the setup for a good few years now, and sooner or later he's going to need to have kind of one of those breakout campaigns, whether that's a breakout loan spell or whether that's kind of a breakout season with us. Obviously, he's gone back out on loan. Let's see what he can do up until January at Boston, and then kind of see where that takes him as well.
Absolutely. So, Andy does make the point, actually, he can still play in the trophy as well. So, we will
probably part of the reason why we're more than happy to let him go out there until January. And then who knows, it may be over to Ireland.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Ocean stay out there in Boston for the remainder of the season, but obviously we'll see what happens in January. We do have a couple of questions, so we will get one out of the way, I think, because we are running over slightly. But Richard asks in the Patreon Discord, he says, now we are into November, and with the winter transfer window looming closer in the distant twilight, which of the current crop of loan players are likely to be recalled or sent back to their parent clubs? I'll let you go first, Charlie.
I take it these are players that we've got in on loan.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Dexter Lembikisa is a loan move only until January anyway.
Yep.
So I've not heard anything. I don't know whether there is an intention to try and extend that, but that's not just as easy as will he be recalled or not. That is, it would have to be a whole new deal. I would certainly like to see him stick around. I think he's shown some promise when we have seen him. So I certainly wouldn't mind that as a move, kind of extending that. But I think I would probably, if I had to guess, I would more likely guess that he would be going back to Wolves. Who else have we got? Franco Caronquo. I think he will be staying with us. I think he's shown enough from us to definitely want to keep him, and I certainly see no reason why Everton would want to recall him at this time. He's getting some good minutes, so I definitely can't see any reason to suggest that he would go back. Justin Abikwu, questionable one. I'd definitely, if I was Coventry, I'd want to see him playing few more minutes between now and January before making that decision. But again, no reason for him necessarily to be recalled by them at this moment in time. The only thing is obviously if he doesn't kind of pick up the minutes between now and then, they could turn around and say, okay, actually, let's recall him and send him out to a League Two club, a Grimsby, for example, and be a starting role player for the second half of the season. That's the only reason I think why he wouldn't be with us for the rest of the campaign. Are there any others, or is that all?
Well, the only one that I can possibly see going back that we currently have on the season long loan is Finn Barbrook.
Of course, yes.
He's been playing for Leicester's under 21. Leicester's? No.
Ipswich.
Sorry, I don't know why I thought Leicester. He's been playing for Ipswich's under 21s. Alongside playing for us as well. So it's one of those where I just think I'd like him to stay, but I just don't see him getting regular football here. Unless we go deep in the trophy and they're happy for him to play solely in the trophy. Mm-hmm. I don't see it being I don't necessarily see him break into the team, which is a bit of a shame because I've liked what I've seen of him when he's played.
The only thing with that is he was an unused substitute in their first game of the season away at Birmingham. So if he does get recalled, he's not going out anywhere in the league. Yeah. So I think for Ipswich, they've probably got a decent deal. They let him come to us. He maybe gets some minutes for their under 21s. Obviously, they'll hope that he can do a little bit more for us, and obviously he gets to play the trophy games, etc., and kind of be in and around our environment. So I don't really see any reason for Ipswich to turn around and recall him. But obviously, I don't know what the finances of the loan is looking like, if we're paying anything towards it. If in January, let's say Huddersfield beats us in the next round of the Pizza Cup, are we turning around and saying, actually, do we see any benefit in keeping Finlay Barbrook on our squad roster for this season? And the question may end up being no. I know that we have got quite a big squad. There are certain squad selection limits. As an under-21 player, I don't think he would count towards things if my football manager knowledge is paying off there. But it could mean as well that if we're getting rid of him, then we do free up a slot in that kind of squad registration for another player. So that may come into the thinking as well.
Absolutely right. Well, that is going to do us, I think, for this week's episode of the podcast. Only thing left to do is give Gaz's book another plug. Go get it on Amazon, The Who's Who of Lincoln City 2017 to 2025. But we'll be back on Wednesday. I believe it will be myself and the Stats Man. So get your questions in if you haven't already. I think there's a couple that we'll be going over on that on Wednesday's podcast. But of course, until then, one more thing to say. Up the Imps.
Up the Imps.